Hello everybody, and welcome to this episode of Chrysalis on the Couch. So joining me today is Rhianan, Simon and Arlene, and we're all going to introduce ourselves in a moment, but today our broad topic of conversation is going to be first day anxieties, and what we mean by that is specifically in terms of taking courses, taking the Chrysalis course, and how it feels on those first days when we're meeting the group for the first time, when we're meeting our tutor or our class for the first time, and how we work with that and how that changes hopefully quite quickly if it's an uncomfortable kind of anxious feeling, and how we work with that. So hopefully you are already subscribed to our channel, because we have lots of episodes, but if you haven't, then do please subscribe to our channel, and if you're enjoying this video and you like this, then do by all means press that like button so that you can let us know. So without further ado, I am Lorna, I'm a tutor at Chrysalis. Arlene, let's move to you. So do you want to say a little bit about where you are with Chrysalis?
Yep, I'm Arlene Jackson, and I'm on year 1 of the 3-year Chrysalis course, and I'm currently doing hypnotherapy, and we're on session 6, so I've been doing it for 6 months.
Great, thank you. And Rhianan?
I'm a tutor, so I teach in Bristol and also Reading, and I'm also a counsellor in my own private practice and a supervisor.
Thank you. And Simon?
I'm on the 3rd year of the course. I think module 3 now. Gosh, time flies, yes.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Simon. Yeah, Arlene, we were just chatting a moment ago, weren't we? And you were thinking back to that first day of your course. How was that for you?
That was scary, very, very scary. I don't think I slept much the night before, and I can remember the car journey on the way down to the venue, and I was getting more and more anxious as we were getting closer and closer. And then once we arrived, I sort of thought, oh, this is it, we're here. And then, of course, I was way too early for the course because we didn't know how long it was going to take us. And I needed to set out extremely early because otherwise, if I'd have been sitting at home, I would have been getting more and more anxious. Despite the fact I was even anxious in the car, is neither here nor there, but we've got there plenty of time. So as I'm sitting there and I'm looking at this venue and I'm thinking, oh, why am I doing this to myself? And I was actually waiting for someone else to go in because we were that early. And I saw someone else walk in and I thought, that's my chance. I'll follow them in because they'll find the front door, they'll find the right room. So there's all of this going through your brain thinking, is it going to be okay? What do we do for lunch? I mean, I was even thinking about what do we do for lunch? When is our first break? How many people are going to be here? Will they like? There's all of this plethora of emotion going through your brain. But I actually managed to find the room, get in there. And there was only 2 of us and our tutor. So I introduced myself and sort of skulked into the room as you do, and I actually sat next to a person who comes from a few miles away from where I live, and in the end we became study buddies, and we've become extremely close over a very short period of time. And as more people were entering the room, there was that feeling of they were all in the room together with first day nerves. Everyone was feeling the same, anxious, fearful, but very, very quickly, I should think, after we'd done our first introductions, we were all looking at each other thinking and appreciating where we'd all come from, you know, different backgrounds, different locations. And we were all coming together to do something that we become quite passionate about, and that was to do a course. You know, we were enthusiastic, we were willing, but, you know, over the 6 sessions that we've currently done, we've got our own WhatsApp group, we're very supportive of each other, and that's happened in a relatively short period of time. And I was really surprised at that, but very thankful.
Yeah, that's you know, that's really interesting to hear, isn't it? So, and Rhianan, it takes a while, doesn't it, for the group to form, but you can see that sort of unfolding before our eyes, if you like, in those first sessions. And as Arlene says, very often people immediately find that there's they're connecting with at least one person straight away and actually have a lot in common with people in the group. Of course, that happens, doesn't it? Because we ask people to actually say a little bit about themselves, which can be a bit nerve-wracking for people. But then I think, as Arlene is saying, also really important to hear about other people as well.
And it's, I suppose for me, because I teach year 2 and year 3, there's a lot of people that have already formed those bonds in year 1. So sometimes I'm actually the one that doesn't know everybody and everybody knows each other, which is an interesting thing. However, I think that's changing more with an increase in also direct entry. So sometimes I've gone into a class and half of them know each other and half of them don't. So I feel less like, well, I'm the only one that doesn't know everybody else, which is really, you know, kind of all getting to know each other. But it is lovely when people start to form bonds, and of course they get to know so much about each other, you know, so much that on other courses you just wouldn't get to know all of those things about each other.
Yeah, that's very true, isn't it? So that's and have you found that, Simon? Has that been your experience? Because you're now in year 3, so you've moved through the course broadly with the same class.
Yeah, they've shrunk a lot. I think we have. There are about 13 of the original 18. But yeah, we're very much so. And what Arlene was saying about you get to know each other very quickly, short period of time, because of the nature of the course. And I remember you on that first day, Anxieties, you're all there and the teacher's asking you to introduce yourself, and you're going around and you're not really paying attention to anything anyone says, apart from thinking, oh my God, it's going to be me soon. But then as soon as you've started it, it becomes, there's a kind of tension released in a way, that you've got over it. What Rhiannon was saying earlier about once you get going, it's okay, because everyone's in the same boat in that they're living in their brains too much, and as soon as they've started it, you know, it becomes much easier.
Yeah, it is strange, this kind of getting to know each other process, isn't it? So, and I think the fact that we do a lot of small group and pairs exercises as well, and, you know, and start those discussions, so that, yes, as you're saying, Arlene, that, you know, you hooked up with somebody quite quickly as a study buddy, and then you know, and then had the opportunity to get to know that person a lot better, but also the opportunity to work with other people as well. You know, just taking that focus then away from needing to communicate with the whole group, but being able to have a deeper communication with 1 or 2 people in a small group. And then sometimes perhaps that awkward thing of, well, they've told me their name once, I'm expected to remember it now. I mean, I know that can sort of feel quite awkward for people. It's like, well, I should know about them. But as you said, Simon, sometimes we can be so intent on worrying about what we're going to say that we're not actually hearing what anybody else says. So how do we overcome that? What do we think? Rhianan, what do you do to sort of,
something that I tried to explain about opening round, because I agree with you, there are some people like, oh, like, they first of all, they don't always like it, not everybody, but some people obviously, to talk about myself, the worst thing I would not want to do, every single month. What I try to do is explain it as like a learning part of actually being a counsellor. Because actually I ask everybody, can we put everything down, so all folders, that we're really open to each other, and tell me how you are and how you're feeling, so how you've been and how you're feeling about the day ahead. So we're modeling what we would do when a client comes in. So how's your week, what would you like to bring? And I try to tell them that also it's not, obviously it is about the person that's talking, but the rest of us, it's an active thing we're all doing. We're actively suspending ourselves to listen to that person. And very much, similarly in counselling, we do have to, we don't want to be sitting there as a counsellor thinking, what do I say next? What do I say next? We want to learn to hear. So I try to do it as a learning part of the day, not just a little checking. And the same at the end of the day. How are you feeling? How are you going to take care of yourself after today? Because that's what we would do with a client. We wouldn't want to end abruptly and send them off in distress. We want to say, tell me how you're going to take care of yourself after this session. So there's a lot of actual learning and holding and suspending, which is actually part of training to be a counsellor.
Yeah, absolutely. And Arlene, are you finding that in the work that you're doing, that actually, we use the group, as a way of understanding how we relate to each other, and that the importance of listening and empathizing helps us not just to be more open with the group, but helps us to realize that, as well as having a lot of different experiences in the group that are all valuable, and we learn a lot from each other, learn a huge amount from each other in the group, but also gives us the opportunity to recognize that we have a lot of shared experience in the group as well.
I think I can certainly agree with that, because I have current skills that I can bring from my NHS position, where I would have to get to know someone within 5 seconds of meeting them, put them at ease. And, I said before, I sort of suffer from imposter syndrome. I come out as this confident person, but deep down, I'm actually not like that at all. I'm quite soft and vulnerable inside. And I think the shared experiences that everyone's brought to the table so far has been so varied. We've got people who are, painter and decorators, and they own their own business. We've got people who've got their own holistic therapy. We've got people from, who are ex-forces, who have got their own issues. And all of that is really relevant to what we talk about in each of the sessions we do, as is my own empathy, my own experience. That is invaluable, because we all can relate to each other in some form or another. And that's unique to me in this sort of situation, because obviously where I've been teaching before, it's been a lot of academic and teaching facts and figures, whereas this is very much emotionally based and self-reflective. And everyone seems to be able to lower the guard and say what they're actually feeling. And that was really evident really early on. I mean, in my first session, I was able to make, no, not that I was able, but what I was telling them about my situation led them on to feeling very, very upset. And they actually cried in the session, because they could link it to something that they were very close to in their own personal life.
Right.
And, that makes a huge difference to people, that you can have a shared experience and you can share things that are going on with you and have no sort of recriminations of that, no judgments from that, which I find really important.
Absolutely. And it's just really good to hear that, isn't it? The depth of the experience that you have. And Simon, you are further through the course. So has this been a similar type of experience for you, that you found that this being able to relate to class members has really been a rich experience?
Yeah, definitely. I think on a couple of levels, mainly. First of all, the different types of character, and some people you naturally get on better with than others, but then you exercise more effort, and it tells you more about yourself in a way, because the idea of the whole thing is to form a relationship with anyone, professional relationship. But in the natural scheme of things, there are some people who you rub along better with than others. And I think it's interesting to have that self-recognition, because that's important. And the other thing is what Arlene was saying about so many different backgrounds in the course means that the amount of things which will get divulged throughout the course are so much richer. And I find that very stimulating, because everyone's experience is so different, but it's coming together. The common theme of the course unites it, and in that way you can relate, and so you find yourself beginning to understand other people who you wouldn't normally even think you'd be able to gain their perspective, because they're just drawn in. It's like the course is a huge fishing net full of, or sweet shop full of all different sorts of sweets.
Yeah.
Sense, but it's just the bringing together of such diversity and finding commonality in that is very stimulating.
Yeah, that's really good to hear. And I think something that strikes me as well, Rhianan, is the importance also of of those early sessions where the group needs to have trust there, don't we? So we're saying here how lovely it is, how important it is that we share experiences, and we share our thoughts and our feelings and so on, and we feel comfortable to do that. But before we do that, we have to know that we're in an environment where we do feel okay to do that. And there's some specific ways that we ensure that happens in Chrysalis, aren't there? But also, I think that there is a recognition, as you were saying, Arlene, that we start to realize that actually, we're sharing a common ground. And as you say, Simon, we're sharing a common ground, but also with a lot of differences. But we note that there is this level here that's that where we all feel comfortable with how we're relating with each other. So what do we do, Rhianan, to help sort of facilitate that trust and warmth process?
I think there's definitely something here coming up for me about vulnerability, because vulnerability doesn't mean I have to go in day one and go blah, straight away. Vulnerability is you get to choose, you get to assess, you get to do that when you feel safe to do it, and who and the when and the how. And so I do try and nurture that with my group, that actually, especially when we're doing skills, or if we get onto things that might touch on some real things, to remember we're in the class setting. So bring as much as you feel able, but it might be, if that feels that this is not right for the setting, to take that to personal therapy and to take that. So they're allowed to choose. And sometimes we might do exercises, whether it be creative or something else. And one way that I was always trained, and I offer this forward, is that you never have to do something, but if you don't do it, I'd encourage you to sit and reflect, or maybe write something down about why I'm finding this hard to do this. So at least you're still doing some reflective work. What about this task was challenging me? And thinking about dynamics, sort of going around with dynamics, that's a very, very true one, because ultimately there's a social construct as well, isn't there, of kind of, am I going to be liked? And going back to my own training, and no one believes me, but I was the quiet one in the room that didn't say very much, and my tutors really had to encourage me to step forward and bring myself out. And I think I tried to do that with people too, that actually I do want to hear from you, that it's okay that you get to choose when you do and when you don't, but what you have to say is important. I do want to hear from you. The other bit that I found useful as well is that if we'd had already moved on from a point, and somebody is sat there thinking, I really wanted to say something and now I've missed my opportunity, I encourage them to, that's okay. If you've missed your opportunity, just say, oh, just a second, actually, I have a point about the bit we were just talking. Do you mind if we go back? So it's to kind of allow that space, really. So I think one thing that I think, Lorna, you might have said as well about the pairs work, I think that's really important as well, to get them to work with different people and get them to find out about each other. That's certainly on Zoom. Zoom was really interesting because when we were doing that, it would like randomly put people into rooms. And so a lot of them fed back when we came back. Actually, they really liked that because they got to really work with people that normally across the room they wouldn't always engage with as much. So trying to get them to kind of work with each other, I think in pairs is really, really useful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do have to say, Rhianan, that I, as a tutor, I make quite a lot of effort to ensure that by a midpoint of the course, everybody's worked with everybody else, regardless if we're on Zoom or, you know, and I try to sort of facilitate conversations around, you know, isn't it interesting that we all sit in exactly the same seat when we come in? And, you know, what happens if I ask you to swap seats with them and move around a bit, and how strange that feels to even be sitting in a different seat in the room. So, yeah, and I think, you know, we're absolutely right. What we're saying here is that, you know, people have, people recognize in the smaller groups that you bring what you want to bring. You can disclose or not as much as you want to. You can tell somebody else how you're feeling. But actually, when you're doing that sort of small pairs work, there's something that opens up there. And then you know that when you've done that exercise and you're back in the main group, that you've had an important experience with somebody. You know, for that 10, 15, whatever sort of short time frame it is, you've had a depth of experience with somebody else in the wider group.
Just briefly, I know we can obviously go to somebody else, but one thing I do ensure, actually, and this is to keep people safe, is that they remember that there's confidentiality within confidentiality in the room. And this came from a course that I went on a little while ago. It was a couple of years ago, and I disclosed something in the smaller group. And then when we went back to the large group, they actually shared what I disclosed in the smaller group to the whole group. And it was a 4-day CPD. I didn't even know many of these people. So I learned what that experience was like for me. And I do ensure that if there's something that's told to you in a smaller group or in pairs, check that you actually do have permission to share that in the larger group. And that, I think, adds safety to the group as well.
Very much so, very much so. So those levels of confidentiality, and, you know, I mean, we're coming on to a basic point here, that we set a group agreement when we start, don't we? So Simon, can you remember the group agreements that was set for you, and how that's operating in the group?
Gosh, that's a good question. Do you know, Lorna, I can't really. I think because a lot of the groups were, because everyone came from a professional background, there was a kind of understanding of confidentiality anyway. Because we were, as I remember, all pretty respectful, and, you know, when we were in our little rooms chatting, nothing really came out in the larger group, unless they asked B if it was okay to share. And I remember the tutor saying to Mark, you know, just always ask before you share, which is a kind of a standard professional thing, really, of respecting each other's, you know, when it's also a good practice with what Rhianan was saying a while ago about starting and ending a session as if you would as if you were a real counsellor. It's good to get that practice in early so that it becomes automatic, so that you develop the internal professional manner.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, so you've already mentioned sort of two things there that I would say are sort of fundamental about the group agreement. So, you know, one is confidentiality and the different levels of confidentiality. The other is, you know, having respect for each other, and valuing each other as well. And so we usually go through, you know, a kind of, you know, a loose list of what we want to agree together. You know, we're all adults. You know, we can decide to a very large extent how we want to work together and how we want to cover off, you know, different things that might occur. You know, people's phones ringing, people needing to leave the room, people bringing food in. You know, all of those kind of things can be agreed between the group. But then these fundamental ones as well, regarding respecting each other, valuing somebody else's experience and opinion, and so on. So, Arlene, have you found that you have this agreement where you all understand how you're working together in your group?
Definitely. I think it's something that we all came into the group with a concept of. We knew that we were going to have to be very respectful, very confidential, which we all have a background in anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But I think those fundamental building blocks are what have built the trust up in our group. Because if you value who you're with, if you're respectful of who you're with, if you don't pass that confidentiality on and they know that they can come to you with something to say if they need to, that all makes it very cohesive within the group, that we're all singing from the same hymn sheet as well, which is incredibly important. Because I think I've said before, when we were doing, you know, revelations, you know, we find out things about ourselves that we probably didn't even know were true or existed. And these are very enlightening things. And to be able to share that with a group is incredible. It really is, because you have that awakening moment where you find something about yourself that you didn't realize you had. But it is really important to have that respect, the trust, the value, the confidentiality, because that's what I think most friendships are built on. And that's what I perceive is coming out of the group that I've been in for such a short time.
So a real sense of friendship.
Yeah. I would.
Yeah, and that's lovely, isn't it? And I think that in my experience, you know, and I teach years 2 and 3, as you do, Rhianan. I very much find the same thing, that you know, people in the group really bond together. And not only know that, you know, when the course is finished and graduation happens and people go into practice, and, you know, now you've got your network, you know, now you've got your referral network of, you know who's specializing in what, and so on and so on. But you also know that you've still got a support group there.
Exactly.
Not necessarily the whole group, but people that you may well, you know, still keep linking up with. And I'm sure that a lot of my students, when they've graduated from the course, continue to stay in touch with each other, and perhaps even continue the support groups that we ask people to set up. And you can see actually that people make really deep friendships based on trusting each other, and as you say, having the conversations that, you know, sometimes we don't ordinarily have in, you know, in ordinary day-to-day life with people who, you know, who we know well. It just, sometimes those conversations just don't arise, do they? So, okay, so are we kind of reaching a point where we realize that those anxieties, you know, those pre-course anxieties or those first day anxieties, hopefully gradually start to diminish? And would you agree with that? Anybody?
I really would. Oh, sorry, Simon, just to butt in yet again. As I say, I did have that imposter syndrome where I wasn't, you know, suitable for the course, capable of doing the course. But that soon evaporates because of the warmth and the genuine feeling of, you know, you're all in it together. And I don't know how to express that. It's a great feeling to have.
Simon, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say the main access to relieving anxiety is just to call someone by their name. I think that's so powerful, especially when the general feeling in the group, the dynamic in the group feels like everyone's very enthusiastic, but they're also very self-aware. it reminds me of a, has anyone seen the film Ratatouille? It's an animated film about rats who take over a kitchen and produce wonderful food. It's a glorious film, and there's one scene where an inspector comes who doesn't know about the rats, but he's coming in to assess the restaurant because it's good reputation, and the chef leaves and everybody leaves, and then the rats come out and they cook this wonderful ratatouille, and he served it, and the slow motion sort of when he takes a sip, and as soon as it touches his tongue, it sort of the image zooms back to when he was a kid in his mum's kitchen and eating lunch, and that kind of is the same as speaking someone's name, but in the taste version. You know, you're calling their name, so because you recognize it, it goes deep to your psyche and it wakes you up out of your preconceptions, and you suddenly are able to engage. And then once you get going, as Arlene says, you know, it becomes much better. You feel less of an imposter, I guess.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Perhaps everybody is sitting there, you know, on those first days, tutors included, you know, with at least a bit of imposter syndrome. And perhaps that's, you know, a really common aspect of human nature. It's like, well, what am I doing here exactly?
Yeah, or do I deserve to be here? And what right have I got to be here? But at the end of the day, it's about communication, and we all do it.
Yeah, the naming is interesting, isn't it? Because that's another anxiety, isn't it? So, you know, we arrive at the group first day, and you know, as tutors, we have a register. So we have a list of people who we expect to arrive on the first day. So we have some names, but we don't have any way of identifying names to people. So unless you've actually find that you've joined a course as a student where you just happen to know somebody, and that's not usual, actually, not usual at the beginning of the course that people know each other, and then nobody knows each other's names, do they? And we usually do this sort of quite formal name tag thing. So just empathizing with each other. It's like, okay, do I know everybody's name? No. So should I expect everybody to know my name? No, I shouldn't. Do I know everybody's name now? No, I'm getting there, but not yet, but I'm trying. Should I expect everybody to know my name yet? No. And, you know, just, it's an interesting exercise in empathy, actually, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
One word that really stood out, and I've kind of been sitting with it for a little bit, is when Arlene used the word respect. And that's kind of been whirring around, because it is lovely when we can make deep friendships, and you will make deep friendships. And I've got a friend, interestingly, similar to Arlene. It was the first person I met in the foyer on the first day, and she happened to live the same side of town as me, and she became my lift buddy. So we actually did like a pre-brief and a debrief every week before class. So that really resonated. But the respect piece is also, and I know this comes in time and it's not always easy in the beginning, I need to almost, or maybe the kind of assumption we have to get on with everybody like a best friend. And it actually is okay that everybody's not everybody's cup of tea. You know, the Gestalt prayer, if we meet, we meet, you know, if we make a connection, we do. If we don't, it's okay. There doesn't have to be a bad person in the story. We just don't all magically click. Some we do, some we don't. But respect has to be there. So people are allowed to have their own way of being, even if it's a different way of being to us. They are allowed to say, for me, this is my experience of this, even if it's different to ours. And I think that's the key word that really stood out in what Arlene was saying earlier, is respect for each other. You know, that's really key. If you can make lovely friendships, great, but the pressure of we have to get on with everyone all the time is not realistic, but we do respect each other.
Yeah. Okay, so is there anything that anybody wants to add here? Just a thought that's come to mind. We've got a few minutes before we need to close.
I think it's quite amazing how we're all touching on the same thing, whether that be tutor or student. And I know that from my point of view, what I haven't mentioned is that the tutor, we all seem to think that we have 24-hour access to. So even though we're creating our own relationships within our peer group, the tutor is always set slightly differently and their perspective is different. But it's a student's, attitude that the tutor is there just for them. And I've noticed that even early on in the group. So I think there has to be an appreciation that, as well as us studying, our tutors do have outside lives. They do have had other cohort groups that they're teaching. And you have to be respectful of the fact that, they're not there for your sole, amusement, if you like, every question that you have, which is why you need to concentrate on your peers, as well as forming a good respect for your tutor, I think.
The tutors will love that when they watch this video, won't they? They'll be like, thank you.
I think it's true. It's true.
I mean, I do, and I'm sure Lorna as well, I do try, and I try, again, this is where boundaries comes in, and that kind of early expectation setting. I think the same with clients. We need to set expectations of each other really soon and be really honest about what I can and can't do. So I'm very honest with my class that I am here for you. I will support you. You can have one-to-ones. I will do what I can for you, but I can't do it at the drop of a hat. So, because I might have clients that day, I might have supervisees that day, but if you contact me, we'll book in a one-to-one, and they know that. So I try to get that in really, really early. And again, it's very difficult because there is a lot of guidance that if people read, it is there. However, I also have to come back to compassion of, I remember what it's like to be a student and looking at the essay question, and no matter how much I look at it, I just can't see it. And so just to have someone just briefly 10-minute phone call, let's break it down. Actually, in simple terms, it's asking you to do this, this, this. They're like, thank you. So it's trying to get that balance, absolutely. But the tutors will love you for saying that. So thank you.
Okay. Well, thanks so much, everybody, and to our audience, thank you for listening. And I hope that this has been interesting and of value for you, and that maybe it sort of sparked some thought processes and for you as well. So if you have enjoyed this episode of Chrysalis on the Couch, then do press that like button. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, then do go ahead and do so, because we'd love to know that you'd like to watch our further episodes. Lots coming up, as always. And, hope you enjoyed this time. Thank you. So it's bye-bye from us.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.